The sacred rings, what are they?
What's going on, Spartans? Welcome back to Doc's Download. I am Doc. Thank you so much for all your support, likes, comments, everything. It really does mean a lot. And I love sharing my passion and having fun in making these videos for you guys. So thank you so much. Keep them coming. This week, we have a really fun one. We are going to be talking about the sacred Halo rings and what they are. Who built them? Where are they? What do they do? And what is their purpose? Just a few of the questions that we're going to dive into this week. And I'm, again, just stoked about this one because there's an incredible story behind these rings. And it isn't just as simple as some people make it out to be. So let's suit up, let's get ready, and let's dive into one of these rings, shall we? All right, Spartans, I've compiled a list of questions here that I think will really build out and form our understanding of what the Halo rings are. First question I want to get into is going to be a little bit of a overall encompassing what they are, and then we'll dive into some more specifics. And of course, the first question is, what are they and what is their purpose? The Halo rings, also called the Halo array, because there are 7 Halo rings in total, and they are spread out across the Milky Way galaxy. They were created as a last resort by the Forerunners, a super advanced civilization from tens of thousands, 100,000 years ago, who were inheritors of the mantle of responsibility. They were losing the war with the flood, and they needed to do something to save the galaxy, to cleanse the galaxy of whatever the flood could use as biomass and infect, take over, and consume any living species. Although they are massive super weapons, they are used for so much more. They have research facilities, they've got species from around the galaxy that they research, test, see if there's anything that they can use against the flood from another species, and dual purpose of collecting so many different species in the galaxy, they are able to actually repopulate the galaxy in the case that the Halo rings fire. Now that we've got an understanding of what they are and somewhat of their purpose, let's jump into a few other questions. Clearly, they are massive rings that float as if they were perfectly placed in space. These rings are 10,000 kilometers in diameter. I mean, that is gargantuan. That is incredibly massive and about roughly the same diameter as Earth. There are 7 of these Halo rings, which are strewn across the galaxy so that their firing patterns overlap each other in the case of the ultimate emergency and needing to light these Halo rings. This specific array that we are talking about is called the Neoteric array, meaning newer, better. And there's only 7 Halo rings. We have Installation 00, which is the Ark, we'll talk about later. We have Installation 1 through 7. They all have their own names: Alpha Halo, Delta Halo, Zeta Halo, so on and so forth. They are all not exactly the same. In fact, they will have different biomes, mountain ranges, oceans. Some might be more based with rainforests, wetlands, and mountain ranges. Some might be more based with tundras and Saharas, oceans, things like that. So each one is crafted specifically. They are not all just perfect cut, copy, carbon paste of each other. One thing about the Neoteric array is that they are smaller than the original senescent Halo array, which their rings were 30,000 kilometers in diameter, and that is 3 times the size of the Neoteric array that we're talking about. All of those rings, I believe there's 12, were end up being destroyed except for one, which we now call Zeta Halo or Gyre 11 to the Forerunners. It was that 30,000 kilometer ring, and it was actually scaled down and used in the Neoteric Array. The reason they swapped from those massive rings to the smaller ones was because they were just so big and they didn't work exactly how they wanted them to. They were hard to maneuver, they were hard to slip space travel with, where the smaller Neoteric Array was incredibly easier to use and far more efficient and far more deadly against the Flood, if need to be, when fired. The last set of questions we talked about, are they all the same? Are they unique? Are they copy paste of each other? And we found out that they are not. And I do actually want to talk about some more of the uniqueness of the rings, and that some were used for different types of research than others. They were all not just researching and analyzing the same data, the same species, the same flood. They all kind of had their own purpose. Each ring has a few very landmark locations that are extremely important to the Halo ring, especially if you are trying to figure out how to maneuver it, figuring out how to fire it, and so on and so forth. Each ring has what is called a control room, which also has a core. That's where all of Halo's systems are operated from, and you're able to get a really good sense of what's going on there and how to make things happen. They also have what is called a library. It is a really cool structure that's got a massive wall, a big shield around it, and this is where the activation index lies. We'll get to that in a moment. There is also what is called a cartographer, where that is where you're going to find real-time records and schematics of the ring. So if you need to be able to find out where the control room is, or where the cartographer is, or maybe where a specific structure is, whatever you might need to do whatever you might be needing to do on a Halo ring. Maybe you're going to blow it up, maybe you're going to activate it, who knows, right? All of them, like we kind of spoke of before, have many research facilities where they're able to study species that they've collected from around the galaxy, test them, see if there's anything they can find to use against the Flood. They even have Flood in stasis pods on these rings so that they can test them, which obviously can be a very scary thing if there's any ever outbreaks or anything, but that's never happened before, right? With the activation index in the control room, that is where you place the activation index. It is in the library, but once you obtain the activation index from the library, which is a cool semi-transparent but solid key that kind of looks like a T. Once you're able to obtain that, you can go to the control room and activate the Halo ring, but there's kind of a trick to it. You've got to be a reclaimer. Again, we'll go into that another time. So inside these Halo rings, of course, they are able to study different species, different things, and again, they're all not doing the exact same thing, because that wouldn't really make very much sense. That every single installation will be doing a little bit different research and be trying to find the key to defeating the Flood. One more thing I wanted to pop in before we jump into the next set of questions. Where the Halo rings are, they require, most of the time, a dense gas giant of a planet to anchor to for its gravitational hold, spin, and integrity. So again, they are strategically placed. They are not just big star map, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, bing, 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 and then they're ready to go. No, obviously they are placed in extremely strategic positions for if the time ever comes to fire the rings. All right, Spartans, we're diving into the last few questions here, and this is where a lot of emotion comes up. This is one of my favorite stories in all of the franchise, because the Forerunners, as we learned, who are the creators of the Halo rings, needed to really find a way to defeat the Flood for good because they were losing their war. The Neoteric Halo Array was built in silence. Not many Forerunners knew about it, although the work was completed. Some of the Forerunners thought, how do we survive? Are we just doomed to die with the rest of the galaxy? And there were shield worlds created. They are, again, massive structures that you are able to survive the firing of the Halo Array because you're able to get inside the core of the planet. Again, it's not a real planet with, a core of magma and fire, right? It is a artificial world where when you get to the core and the depth, there's actually a slip space portal that you're able to go into, and it protects you. And inside the slip space portal, it's almost like you're just on a perfect world. Food, water, air, all the things you need. So that was their, defense against their own weapon to try and figure it out. Let's talk about the destructive radius of these rings. You have a radius of 25,000 light years. Incomprehensible to the human mind, really, on that true nature of that distance. But let me tell you, you're not getting away from it anytime soon if you're within that blast radius. Again, we talked about they strategically set these halo rings so that across the Milky Way galaxy, you'll have a ring here, 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 and here, and here. And so when all of them light, they'll be able to cover each other and destroy the entirety of sentient life in the galaxy, because that is what the rings do. The blast targets sentient life with nervous systems, humans, animals, dogs, cats, things like that. And it destroys the nervous system because that is how the Flood actually gets into their prey and consumes them and then turns them into an infected Flood form. So as the Halo Array fires, it destroys the nervous system of any sentient being in those 25,000 light years, and then there's the atomizing of the remaining biomass, so you almost turn to dust when the Halo Array lights and fires. One thing I want to touch on is, where are the rings built? How are the rings built? And that is something called the Ark, Installation 00. The Ark is, again, another monstrous, incredibly large structure built by the Forerunners. Some readings say that it's anywhere from 90 to 100,000 kilometers in diameter, which is 50,000 or 60,000 miles for our brains to somewhat comprehend. Again, the Ark is a massive structure. It takes entire planets into its core and breaks them down, pulling raw materials from these planets and using it to create new halo rings.
That's our galaxy. We're beyond the rim.
2 to the 18th light years from Galactic Center, to be precise.
What is this place?
The Ark.
This is the Ark?
I had always assumed it was part of a SHIELD installation, but it seems I was mistaken.
That's a first.
The story here is one of my favorites. We see what is the peak civilization in the galaxy truly create a last resort, truly create the Halo Array to ensure the Flood's defeat, but in turn also their own. It gets to a point where there is nothing else that they can do, and they light the rings. And for tens of thousands of years, species came and went, but nothing like the Forerunners ever came back. But maybe that'll change in the future. So now that we know what the Halo rings are, we know that they are these massive super weapons. They are these research facilities that have conservation measures in case of the rings firing, and they're able to repopulate the galaxy. The Forerunners had good enough foresight that they were able to do that. The librarian specifically wanted to have that conservation measure in place so that if they ever really did have to fire the rings, that the galaxy wasn't just doomed to a non-sentient existence. So really, that sacrifice the Foreigners had to make was do or die, literally, and unfortunately, it took the Forerunner species and washed them out. This part isn't necessarily a question per se, but more of a fun little addition to each installation. Not only are they unique in their topography, but they also have a monitor, someone who is the caretaker of the installation, somebody who does maintenance, somebody who does security, even combat if need be, upgrades, maintenance, all of the above. The most famous monitor that we know is 343 Guilty Spark, and he is the monitor of Installation 04. He helps us on Alpha Halo find the activation index and maneuver our way through Halo, and we even learn about the Forerunners through him, and he even calls the Master Chief child of his makers, a reclaimer. But we'll have to find out more about what that means later. Again, these guys are fun. There's typically one per installation, and again, just kind of a funny little companion who sometimes will help us and sometimes isn't our friend. It just kind of depends on the situation and what we're trying to do to this specific monitor's ring. 343 Guilty Spark definitely was our friend a lot, but he certainly wasn't happy with us a few times because we did destroy Alpha Halo, and then while the Ark was creating another, we destroyed its replacement. So 343 gets pretty bummed at us in that moment. But again, just fun characters, and they bring a different light to such a dark and sacrificial story where the Foreigners again knew they had to wipe out all life to save all of the life. And so the monitors helped after the Halo rings were lit, and now they just aimlessly wander their installations until something happens. Spartans, we did it. I really hope this video further shaped your understanding of what the Halo rings are and what the Halo array is, its purpose, what it does, and why it was truly built by the Forerunners. Because, again, these weren't just super weapons to control the galaxy, they were to genuinely save it. Even if the Forerunners maybe did a few things they shouldn't have. Let me know which Halo installation is your favorite. I love Zeta Halo, Alpha Halo, Delta Halo are some of the favorites, obviously, because we get to visit those. A few of them we don't get to visit in-game, but rather maybe in books and things like that. But let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about the Halo array, the Halo rings, or even specifics on them. And I'd love to try and cover what I can. But again, I really hope this helped, and thank you so much for watching, liking, supporting. It really does mean the world, and see you next time, Spartans.